everybody, and welcome to the January 8th, 2019 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. I think I'm getting faster at saying that. Anyway, it is with a heavy heart I regret to inform you that Ted Cruz is at it again. GOP Senator Cruz, Representative Rooney introduced constitutional amendment to impose term limits on Congress. Of course, the last time term limits were imposed, it was a tool against Democrats back in the Roosevelt era, and I have no doubt it will be the same case for this time. For too long, members of Congress have abused their power and ignored the will of the American people, Cruz said. Yes, by doing what the people elected them to do. Makes sense. By the way, Cruz, if you care about the will of the people, hate to be that guy, but where's your proposal for a constitutional amendment to abolish the Electoral College? Either start with that and go from there, or just shut up. Term limits on members of Congress offer a solution to the brokenness we see in Washington, D.C. It is long past time for Congress to hold itself accountable. Congress doesn't hold itself accountable. The people hold it accountable, you idiot. And for that matter, you want to talk about the will of the people. Well, Robert Bright was elected by the people 10 times. Ted Kennedy was elected by the people 8 times. Strom Thurmond was elected by the people, I think, a good 8 times. I hate Strom Thurmond, don't get me wrong, but he was elected by the people. I urge my colleagues to submit this constitutional amendment to the states for speedy ratification. And of course, I talked about how it's gained traction in both parties, with notable former Democratic Representative Beto O'Rourke, a potential 2020 hopeful who ran against Cruz in the Senate, called for term limits in Congress earlier this year, to which my response is, Beto, shoot yourself in the foot. Don't shoot me in the foot. The official Democratic coalition tweeted out, "This might be the first piece of Ted Cruz legislation we can get behind. Once again, because I'm pretty sure they absolutely love shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, first there was Pago, then there's this. Are you guys just addicted to making sure you guys are no longer a viable party? I mean, can't wait for the revolution. Party revolution. As in a new party comes out. This joke isn't working. Anyway, Florida Senator, you know what? He basically thinks he's from Israel anyway. We'll acknowledge that delusion on this show from now on. Israeli Senator Marco Rubio recently proposed a piece of legislation against BDS, or the Boycott, Divestment, Sanction movement against Israel. Marco Rubio, during a government shutdown, introduced legislation called the Combating BDS Act, and got surprised when people thought it was censorship, because Marco Rubio is not very smart. The legislation would make it so the federal government would not purchase any product from any company that engaged in the BDS movement. Which, how many companies actually support BDS? I'm actually curious about that one. I don't think it's all that many. This is kind of a constitutional middle ground, honestly, because it is the government punishing you through speech, but it is also with freedom of association. So, it's still kind of debatable whether or not this goes against your First Amendment rights. I personally would only really need to see a Supreme Court case on this in order to have my mind changed, because I'm completely middle of the fence about this. And that's coming from someone who's very critical of Israel, and someone who has openly endorsed not the end goals of the BDS movement. I think there are people who believe in, like, right to return ideas, which I disagree with. but at least the general idea that at this point Israel has done some very bad things. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, so you know it's great when I'm actually getting news from the Daily Caller due to how silly this is getting. PragerU filed a second suit against Google, YouTube's parent company, for allegedly violating California state laws and restricting access to its videos. Your previous one failed. The conservative nonprofit educational videos have consistently been placed in YouTube's restricted mode. So do tons of videos. Heck, so does tons of LGBT-related content. Don't see them suing. Would you support a lawsuit for those? And barred from monetizing ad revenue. I thought you guys were a non-profit. A separate lawsuit Prager filed against Google at the federal level was dismissed in a district court and is currently on appeal before a federal appeals court. Again, because they just can't take their ball and go home. It is that simple. They are unable to take their ball and go home. I'll read a little bit more. This is from Daily Caller, for the record. That's how silly this is. I could only find... They were the most reliable source I could find. If you don't know, Caller is, I think, Tucker Carlson's news website. Conservative nonprofit, but they need ad revenue, apparently. PragerU filed a suit against Google in California's court on Tuesday for allegedly violating state laws restricting access to Prager's educational videos on YouTube. Okay, which laws? According to a copy, the complaint obtained by Daily Caller News Foundation. Let's see what these are. Restricting the nonprofit's freedom of speech contrary to the state constitution. No. YouTube is using its freedom of association to kick you off its platform. They aren't even kicking you off, for the record. They're letting you stay and just giving you less access. That's perfectly okay under law. Discriminating against Prager on a religious and political basis in violation of the State Civil Rights Act. No, there's been tons of liberal content that has been censored too. Engaging in unlawful, misleading, and unfair business practices contrary to the state's unfair competition laws. How? And breach of contract for violating YouTube's own terms of service. Again, how? But anyway, this is the last thing we'll cover today. Mitch McConnell decided to make his argument for the wall. What did the Senate Majority Leader / Turtle Man have to say? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell notes that funding of President Donald Trump's border wall represents only 0.1% of federal spending. You know, Mitch, giving me $1 billion would represent 1/5 of that 0.1% of federal spending. So therefore, if you want to be consistent, I demand that you introduce the Give Ephrom $1 billion Act of 2019. No? Okay then. McConnell then reads past statements from Obama, Hillary, and Schumer back when they supported border security. First off, only one of those is a senator right now who's going to vote, so that doesn't even make any sense. But second off, what changed in that time? Maybe the proposal. Yes, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Chuck Schumer, all three voted for George W. Bush's border fence. They then saw that not working and thought, wow, this doesn't work. Let's try not doing this again. Then Donald Trump came along and was like, actually, let's do this again. And then Chuck Schumer said, no, that's a bad idea. Then Donald Trump said, or in this case, Mr. McConnell, well, you supported the other failed attempt, why don't you support mine? Calling it now, at some point, the next Republican president will say we should build a dome around this country, Simpsons movie style. I'm Ephrom, and good night.